Hey everyone, welcome to this video. In this lecture, you will learn how to install Docker on Ubuntu 24.04. A brief introduction about Docker. Docker is an open source containerization platform that lets you seamlessly build, share, and deploy applications anywhere, regardless of the computing environment, so whether it's on Linux, Windows, or Mac system. Docker uses OS-level virtualization to package applications inside containers. Containers are simply isolated environments that package everything an application needs to run, and this includes the source code, binaries, dependencies, and libraries. And if you want to supercharge your Docker infrastructure, scale effortlessly, and enjoy flexible storage, you can deploy a bare metal or a virtual server on Cherry Servers, which is a European leading cloud provider. And this will help you eliminate infrastructure headaches with free 24/7 technical support, pay-as-you-go pricing, and global availability. Now let's get started with installing Docker on Ubuntu 24.04. So to start off, you need the following prerequisites. You need an instance of Ubuntu 24.04 with SSH access and a sudo user configured. So as you can see, we are already logged into a VPS of Ubuntu 24.04. And just to confirm the version, I'm going to run the command cat /etc/os-release, and I'm going to hit enter. So as you can see, we are running the latest version of Ubuntu 24.04.1. Okay, so with that out of the way, now let's get started with the installation of Docker. The first step in installing Docker is to ensure the dependencies required during the installation are installed. So to do so, first we are going to update the system by running the command sudo apt-update. So this is going to refresh the local package index. And as you can see the screen, this is underway and we are done. Okay. Now the next step, we are going to install the dependencies required for the installation to progress smoothly. Now I have saved this in my notepad here, and this is the command for installing the dependencies. So I'm going to copy this entire command here, and I'm gonna run this on my terminal. I'm gonna paste this and I'm gonna run on the terminal. So as you can see, the installation is complete. So all the dependencies have already been installed. All right. Now the next step is to install Docker. Now there are two avenues of installing Docker on Ubuntu. You can install it from the default repositories using the apt package manager. And to do so, you can run the command sudo apt install docker.io with the -y option for non-interactive installation. So this will install the version hosted on Ubuntu repositories. Now a disclaimer is that this does not provide the most current version, and if you don't mind the version, you can go with this installation method. However, if you want the most current version, you need to install it from the official Docker repository, and this is exactly what you're going to do. So I'm simply going to cancel this out, okay, and I'm going to guide you how to install from the official repository. So the first step is to download the Docker GPG sign-in key, and to do so, I'm going to copy this command here that I've saved on my notepad. So here I'm going to copy this command here, and then I'm going to paste it on my terminal. So this is going to download and save the GPG key in the user share keyrings directory. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, now the next step is to add the Docker apt repository to our system, and this will allow us to install Docker from the Docker repository. So once again, I'm going back to my notepad, and I'm gonna copy this entire command here, and I'm gonna run this on the terminal. So this is going to save the repository in the etc apt sources.list directory. Okay, and I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, now let's verify this. So I'm going to check the contents of the etc apt sources list .d directory, and as you can see, here is the file that contains the Docker repository. All right. Now, once you've added the repository, you need to update the local package index to notify the system of the newly added repository. And to do so, we are going to run the command sudo apt update once again and hit enter. So as you can see, the system has recognized that we have an entry for Docker, as you can see here on my terminal. All right. Okay, so now we can install Docker Community Edition, which is free to download and use, by the way. And to do so, I'm simply going to run the command sudo apt install docker -ce. CE stands for Community Edition with the -y flag, okay, for non-interactive installation. So I'm gonna hit enter, and as you can see, all these packages will be installed. So just give it a minute or two for the installation to progress. And there we go. So we have successfully installed Docker on Ubuntu 24.04. okay, now Docker service starts automatically upon installation, and we can verify this by running the command sudo systemctl status docker, like that. Hit enter. You'll get this output here, and as you can see, Docker is active and running as we expected, and this shows us that we are on the right track. So far we have installed Docker and checked its status, which we have confirmed is active and running. So now see you in the next step. By default, running and managing Docker is a pre-serve for the root or the sudo user, which is simply a regular user with elevated privileges. So the implication here is that only the root or sudo user can run Docker commands. Now, for an even better experience, you can add the currently logged in user to the Docker group to run Docker commands seamlessly. And this is what you're going to do in this step. We are going to add the currently logged in user, which is Cherry, to the Docker group. In your case, this might be a different user, okay? And we are doing this so that you can run Docker commands without invoking sudo. So to do this, we are going to use the user mode command. So on your terminal, run the command sudo, then followed by the user mode command, followed by -a. So the -a option is for add, then uppercase G for the group. So here we're going to specify the Docker group here, okay, then followed by the currently logged in user, which we are going to specify using the $sign user. So this is the user environment variable that points to the currently logged in user. In our case, this user is the user called Cherry, and this will obviously differ in your case. So I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, now the currently logged in user belongs to the Docker group. Okay, now to the next command to run is the new group command, like that, and hit enter. Okay, now let's verify that the user has been added to the Docker group, and we can do this by checking the groups the user belongs to using the command groups followed by the user, in our case Cherry, and hit enter. So as you can see here, the user Cherry is part of the Docker group, okay, as well as the sudo group. Okay, now to effect the changes, you need to close and start a new shell session. Okay, alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can simply run the command su- then the user environment variable, like that, and hit enter. Okay, so here I'm going to provide the password and hit enter. Now we can run Docker commands seamlessly as a regular user without having to invoke sudo. So let's check the Docker version, and to do so, simply run the command docker version and hit enter. So here you're going to get this information printed out on your screen. So as you can see, we are running Docker Community Edition, and this is the version of Docker. We are running 27 24.03.1. Here we have the API version, which is 1.47. We have Go version, and so on and so forth. Okay, so in this step, we have added the regular user to the Docker group to allow us to run Docker commands without running sudo. Okay, so see you in the next step. Up to this point, Docker has successfully been installed. Now, before proceeding any further, you need to ensure that you can pull images and run containers from Docker Hub, which is the largest container registry for developers and open source contributors. Now, Docker registry is configured by default with Docker, all right? And to test this, we will run a container from the hello world image, okay? So to do so, on your terminal, run the command docker run hello-world, okay? And hit enter. All right, now I'm going to explain shortly what you can see on the screen here. Okay, so this is the output you're going to get. All right, so I know you're wondering what exactly happened. So as we tested earlier, Docker was running. So the Docker client runs in the background, and the docker run command simply runs the hello world image. So this command searches for the hello world image locally. Okay, so here you can see it was unable to locate the hello world image on your system, and the next step, it pulls the image from the Docker Hub registry. Okay, and as you can see here in the fourth line, the pull was complete. Okay, so once the image was pulled, now Docker created a new container from that image, which was able to generate this message here, hello from Docker, and everything else you see on your screen here. Okay, and after displaying the information on the terminal, the container exited. Okay, and as you can see here, you have a walkthrough of everything or all the steps taken by Docker to print out this message. So as you can see, the Docker client contacted the Docker daemon, which pulled the hello world image from Docker Hub, since the image was not located locally on the system. So the Docker daemon or the service created a new container from that image, which runs the executable that produces the output you're currently reading. And eventually the Docker daemon streamed out the output to the Docker client, which it sent on your terminal. Okay, and then finally the container exited. All right, so that confirms that Docker is working as expected. And in the next step, we are going to run some Docker commands which involve downloading images and working with containers. All right, so see you in the next step. Before we start using Docker to interact with containers and images, let's familiarize ourselves with the Docker syntax. So the Docker CLI uses the following syntax. So we have Docker, followed by the options that you want to include, and lastly, the command. To get a list of common Docker commands, simply run Docker without any command line options and hit enter. So this generates the following output, which provides you with information about the usage. So as you can see, this is the syntax. So we have Docker followed by options, then the command. Then we have common commands such as docker run. So this allows you to create and run a new container from an image. We have docker ps, which lists the containers. Okay. Then we have docker pull, which downloads an image from a registry, and so on and so forth. So take some time and go over some of these commands one by one to familiarize yourself with how to use Docker. All right. So in our next step, we are going to see how to work with Docker images. So see you in the next step. This section forms an introduction to working with Docker images. And a Docker image is essentially a file that contains instructions of building a container. Now, by default, we have seen that Docker is configured to use Docker Hub as the default online registry for Docker images. And before working with images, you can check for their availability on the Docker Hub registry by running the command docker search followed by the image name. So for example, if you want to search for the Nginx Docker image, simply run the command docker search Nginx, and this is the output you get. Okay, so the first column shows you the name of the Docker image. Okay, the second column is a brief description. The third column are the stars. So these are the stars the image gets or has on the Docker Hub registry, and the last column here shows you the official image. So as you can see, the first entry here on the first row, this is the official image from the maintainers. Okay, and this is the image we are going to pull or download to our system. All right, so if you can feel free to go over the description of the rest of the Nginx images. Okay, so for now I'm going to clear the screen. Now we are going to download the official Nginx image from Docker. Okay, and to do that we are going to run the command docker pull. So pull downloads the image, so we're going to provide the image name, which is Nginx. So this command will download the Nginx, the latest image of Nginx to our system, as you can see. Okay, so as you can see, the download of the Nginx Docker image is complete. All right, and now to check the current or the existing Docker images, simply run the command docker images like that and hit enter. Okay, so as you can see, we currently have two images. We have the latest image that we have downloaded, which is the Nginx image. All right, so here you can see the tag, which is latest. We have the image ID, the date it was last updated, which is 5 weeks ago, and the size here, which is 192 megabytes. Also, we have the hello world image that we downloaded earlier, and this created a container that printed some output, if you can remember from our last step. Okay, so here the docker images command prints out the images on your system and also provides more information such as the image ID, the modification date, and the image size. All right, now in our next step we are going to see how to work with Docker containers. In this section we are going to see how to work with Docker containers. Now, to create a container from an image, simply run the command docker run followed by the image name. Okay, so when the image is locally available on your system, the container is created right away and its container ID will be printed to the terminal. However, if the image is unavailable, Docker will pull it from the Docker Hub and create a container. And to do so, we are going to create a container from the Nginx image that currently resides on our system. So I'm going to run the docker run command, and I'm going to pass the -d option for running the container in detached mode or in the background. Okay, then I'm going to perform some port mapping using the -p option. All right, so I'm going to map port 80 on the container to port 8080 on the server. Okay, then lastly I'm going to pass the name of the image, which is Nginx. Okay, so this command will run the Nginx container in the background, and this maps port 80 on the container to port 8080 on my system or server. So I'm gonna hit enter, and as you can see on your console here, this is the complete container image. All right, so what we're going to do, we are going to list the containers running on the system, and to do so I'm simply going to run the command docker ps and hit enter. So this is the container ID here, and as you can see, these characters resemble the first few characters here okay, up to this point. Okay, so this is the container image. So this is the image from which the container was created, and here you can see the container was created 21 seconds ago and it's been up for 19 seconds. Okay, so this is the port mapping. As you can see, we have mapped port 80 on the container to port 8080 on our server. Okay, so this confirms that the container is up and running, and since this is a web server, we can easily confirm this from our web browser. Okay, so what you're going to do, we are going to head over to our web browser and confirm exactly that. All right, so here I've deployed my web browser and I'm simply going to provide the server IP address. Then I'm going to append the port that I specified, which is port 8080 on my server. Then I'm going to hit enter, and there we go. So as you can see, we have confirmed that our web server container image that's running Nginx is up and running. All right, so this confirms that our container image is running as expected. Okay, so now let's head back to our terminal so that we can run more commands. Now, from the previous command, we were able to see the containers on our system. Now, the docker ps command only lists the currently active containers. Okay, so to list all the containers, including those that exited, you need to pass the -a option like that. So this is going to print out all the Docker containers, including the ones that exited. So when you hit enter, so this time around, you can see we have two entries. We have the first container, which is the Nginx container, which has been up for 10 minutes. And secondly, we have the hello world container, which exited around 33 minutes ago. Okay, so the -a option will print out all the images, including the ones that exited. Okay, now to stop a running container, you need to run the docker stop command followed by the container ID. Okay, so for example, to stop the Nginx container, simply run the command docker stop, then followed by the container ID, which is this one here. So I'm gonna paste that and I'm gonna hit enter. So if you run docker ps, so this time around you can see there's no entry because all containers have been stopped. Okay, also apart from using the container image, you can also use the container arbitrary name. So as you can see here, this is the container name here, which is arbitrarily assigned by Docker, and this is unique to each container image. So you can copy this, and we have docker stop container name, which is reverend_Herschel. So of course this will be different from one container to another. Okay, so I'm going to now clear the screen. Okay, so we have seen how to stop a container image. Okay, now to remove a container, as we saw earlier, first of all you need to stop it. Okay, now to remove a container, you need to run the docker rm command followed by the container ID. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this first, and I'm going to check the containers ID. Okay, so as you can see, this has already been stopped. So we are going to remove it by running docker rm, then followed by this container ID here, and I'm going to hit enter. So that container no longer exists on our system. So if we run the docker ps-a, you can see now we only have the hello world container on our system. Okay, all right, now I'm going to start the Nginx container once more, and I'm going to demonstrate how to remove a container image. Okay, so now I'm going to run docker run -d -p 8080, then Nginx. Okay, so we have created another Nginx or a new Nginx container. Okay, so if we run docker ps, you can see now we have a fresh Nginx container. All right. So now let's check how to remove a Docker image. All right. So as you saw earlier, this is the currently running container, which is the Nginx container. Okay. Now let's see information about the images. So I'm going to run docker images command, and this is the latest image that we have just downloaded. And this is the information we have. Now to remove an image, you run the docker rmi command like that, followed by the name of the image, in this case Nginx. However, before you remove an image, you first of all need to stop and remove the container associated with the image. Otherwise, if you run this command, you're going to run into an error. Okay, so as you can see, conflict, unable to remove repository reference Nginx, must force container. Okay, so first of all, we need to remove this container. And what you're going to do, we are going first of all to stop it by running docker, then stop. Then you're going to provide the container ID. So this is the container ID here. So I'm going to copy and paste this and press enter. So this will stop the Nginx container. Now, once the container is stopped, you're going to remove it using the command docker rm, then provide the same container ID. Okay. And hit enter. So as you can see now, the container has been removed. Okay, and just to confirm this, you can run docker ps-a. Okay, so as you can see, the Nginx container has been removed. Now with the container successfully removed, now we can remove the image by running docker rmi Nginx. So here you can use either the repository name Nginx or the image ID here. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter, and there you go, the image has successfully been removed. And if we run docker images command, you can see the Nginx container image has been removed from the system. All right, and there we go. So this marks the end of our tutorial. So in this tutorial, we have successfully installed Docker on Ubuntu 24.04, and you have also learned how to work with Docker containers and images. So that's it for this lecture. If you found it insightful, please leave a like and hit the subscribe button to subscribe to our videos, as this will go a long way in helping grow this channel. So that's it for this lecture. See you in the next lecture.